good and stable internet connection, if you have an earphone or headset, we recommend you to use it so that your voice can clearly and loudly to be heard. During the Q&A discussion session, all participants, please use the chat box to deliver the questions. Thank you for your cooperation and consideration.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to guest lecture series on SDGs today, Tuesday, 29th of June, 2021. I am Denti from ITS Global Engagement, and I will be your master of ceremony this afternoon. And thank you for joining our guest lecture series on SDGs today. Before we start our agenda, let me inform you of some important information for today's event. First, please fill your attendance at bit.ly/attendance_GLS SDGs, and our committee also sent the attendance link in the Zoom chat room. And for participants who wish to get an e-certificate and a stamp, please fill the attendance within 15 minutes after the session starts. And second, participants who wish to ask questions during the question and answer session, please send your question to intip.in/Q&A GLS SDGs. And the link for asking question is sent in the chat room as well. Or you can ask directly by clicking the raise hand feature. So ladies and gentlemen, this guest lecture series on SDGs is dedicated as a form of appreciation in commemorating the 60th anniversary of Institut Teknologi 10 November Surabaya. And today's guest lecture brings the topic of making sustainable pay, green entrepreneurship at the University of Southampton that will be delivered by our honorable speaker, Dr. Pathik. And second, there will be the topic of design thinking and business growth by Dr. Puti Sinansari from ITS. And today's lecture will be moderated by Dr. Bahalwan Apriansyah from ITS. And before we start our agenda, allow me to deliver our schedule today as follows. First, opening followed by short remarks. Second, introduction to moderator. Third, lecture session by Dr. Pathik. Fourth, lecture session by Dr. Puti Sinansari. Fifth, question and answer section. Sixth, certificate awarding, and then lastly, closing. Now, before we proceed to the main agenda, which is the lecture, let me introduce our moderator. Dr. Bahalwan Apriansyah is a lecturer at Business Management Department of Institut Teknologi 10 November. He is graduated from Industrial Engineering Department, ITS, and National Cheng Kung University, Tainan, Taiwan. And his research of interest is culture, branding, social entrepreneurship, consumer behavior, new venture creation, marketing management, and small medium enterprises. So Dr. Bahalwan Apriansyah, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Mbak Deti, for having me as the master of ceremony for today's sessions. I would like giving gratitude for everyone who's just coming today. And first of all, I would like to extend my grateful for being here and also invited by DKG. And also I would like to greetings to Mr. Dr. Pathik from Southampton University. Hi, good afternoon from Indonesia. And also, I would like to extend my greetings to Bu Puti. Hello, Bu Puti. Okay, good afternoon. And then, this is such an honor for me to being moderator for today's session. And this is very insightful topics. It's going to be still associated with SDG Sustainable Development Goals, but for specific topics we're gonna learn how about the green entrepreneur and also the tools of design thinking. So before that, first that will be two session. First of all, by making sustainable pay with green entrepreneurship at the University of Southampton, delivered by Dr. Pathik, and followed by Miss Puti, Bu Puti, as tools of design thinking and business growth. So it's just such a very excited courses, and we have gonna take a learn from today's sessions. And first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Pathik. Could you hear my sounds, Dr. Pathik? Still muted. Okay.
Hello, Palahavan.
Okay.
Welcome everyone, and good morning, good afternoon to you, or good evening if we have participants from that part of the world as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pathik. And I will give it some narration before going to the main session, which is your times. Business is an activity of buying and selling goods and the services to make a profit, such as having an income or revenue, or just it's beyond greater than cost. And all business must be financially viable. Yeah. And without these basic preconditions, they cannot sustain by themselves, even cannot pay their staff or continue to produce the product or offer services to this market, including the University of Southampton. The title of Making Sustainable Pay, Green Entrepreneurship at University of Southampton. Without further ado, time is yours, Dr. Pathik.
Thank you so much, Bahalavan, and hello everyone. It's for me a really great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Miss Vivi, for all the work you've been doing to organize this so superbly. And congratulations to everyone at the university for the 60th anniversary. This is really incredible. And just hearing everything in the videos and everything that I've been reading about ITS and the focus on sustainability and the sustainable development goals and the next generation. It's so heartening to see and to hear, and the alignment between ITS and the university is very, very strong. So I'm delighted to represent the university here today with you and to deliver this talk on making sustainability pay, green entrepreneurship at our university. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, and hopefully you can see that. I would appreciate it if you could let me know if this is visible.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen? Thank you so much. Okay. So just before I start, let me just give you a little bit of an introduction to me. So I'm an associate professor of social entrepreneurship at the university. I did my PhD at Warwick. I'm a visiting professor at Audencia Business School and the Institute of Technology Madras in India, and Ryerson University in Canada. You can read all of that. So I work for the UNDP as an expert in the Inclusive Policy Lab and for the World Economic Forum. I have a TED Talk, which you can look up if you're interested, about building careers of value, which I know our students find very interesting. But the most important thing to learn about me, I guess, is that my mission is to nurture the leaders of tomorrow. And that for me is absolutely pivotal. I think everything that we've heard about the leadership of ITS is really geared towards this mission as well, about creating this new generation, empowering this new generation, enabling this new generation by giving them the resources, the facilities, and the exposure in order to realize their full potential and build this new sustainable world that clearly we all need. So I want to start by just asking the question. So this is going to depend on you, on the students in the room, helping me out here. So this slide shows the evolution of a household object, something that I think all of us have in our houses or our flats, apartments, wherever we are in the world, and that is a kettle. So this is the evolution of the kettle, going back about 200 years. So you can see how over time the kettle has developed from, on the left, this very rude, crude and very basic kettle, which didn't insulate very well, so lots of heat escaped, didn't keep the tea particularly warm. You can see how the materials changed over time, and it became sleeker, it became more efficient, it became more effective. And then we have this final, the last, I guess, iteration of the kettle, the one that we all recognize today. But I want to just ask you, what do you think comes next? So what's next in this innovation chain? What's the next version, do you think? And you can just put it in the chat if you want. So take a guess at what you think the next one is. So just, I'm going to give you a little bit of time. Just put any of your ideas in the chat and let's see what you come up with.
Okay, really, really, any ideas or your thoughts regarding what Dr. Pathak says? What's going on? What's gonna be next of cattle or future cattle, isn't it?
It's already, unfortunately, my slides have already gone forward, but there we are. So the answer is actually a hot water tap. So this is meant to illustrate a basic problem when it comes to understanding problems, right? Because the issue we always have is we think if you're in the business of making kettles, your thought was, well, our business is making kettles. But actually that wasn't the problem they were looking to solve. The problem they were looking to solve was what's the most efficient way to deliver hot water to people. That's actually the problem. So the kettle was just a vehicle, right? The kettle was just the best way that people knew how in order to deliver hot water to people around the world. But when you realize that it's not actually delivering kettles or building kettles that's important, but the delivery of hot water, well, then you realize the next step has to be something which can do that more efficiently. And that is, of course, the hot water tap. And we're now seeing this being rolled out around the world. And it's an illustration, fundamentally, that we are the problems we choose. Right? We are the problems we choose. That's really, really important. That whatever we're doing in life, we are always solving a problem. Right? I'm solving a problem as an associate professor. There are doctors who are solving the problem of lack of access to medicine. There are cleaners who are solving the problem of unclean rooms. But fundamentally, all of us, at some stage in our professional lives and even our personal lives, we have a role which is orientated around the solving of a problem. So here are a few examples of some recent products which you may be familiar with. So we have Snapchat, we have supersized meals, Botox, and TikTok. So my question to you is, do any of these new innovations, these new product innovations, these new service innovations actually solve a problem, or a problem that anyone really asked for? Right? Snapchat is now $1 billion company, but in reality, what is the problem that they are solving? Right? Snapchat has created a need where actually there is no fundamental problem. I think some of you probably are aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But if you are to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Snapchat doesn't figure on that hierarchy of needs. Neither do supersized meals, neither does Botox, and neither does TikTok. So my point is, there is a lot of money being invested and a lot of brain power that's being invested in solving problems that no one actually has identified. The problem with the capitalist system as it exists right now, or our current economy, is that we have lots of intellectual property, intellectual power, economic power being invested in problems that no one really has asked for solutions to. And this is a fundamental problem, but also in some ways, I think a very personal challenge to all of us to be very conscious that when we think about our place in the world, when we think about our future jobs, to know that we are solving a problem of some kind for someone. And we get to choose that problem, right? That's our choice. And one of the things I want to highlight when I talk about some of our green entrepreneurs is that all of them had choices. They all had choices about the kind of jobs and careers they could go into, but they said that the problems we want to solve are creating businesses, creating enterprises that can address climate change. A further illustration of this issue, This is a chart from the World Health Organization, which looks at global spending in 2014. And I want you just to look at this chart carefully. So what it shows on the y-axis is the billions of dollars spent every year on solving two problems. One, as you can see on the x-axis, is malaria control. The second is hair loss, and in particular, male pattern baldness. Now, luckily, I don't suffer from that yet, but I know lots of people who do. You can see here in 2014, sorry, $1.8 billion was spent on malaria control. 1.8 billion. How much was spent on hair loss? 2 billion. Look at that. In this 1 year, the world spent more money on trying to address the problem of hair loss in men than it did on malaria control. Now, as far as I know, no one has died from male pattern baldness. Some men find it uncomfortable, but no one's died from it. But hundreds of thousands of people die from malaria every single year. So there is a real issue here in the way that we allocate resources. Why is it that our current economy skews the incentives, right? And that's what's happening here. The incentives for action are being skewed from a really substantial problem, malaria, to a very insubstantial problem, hair loss. And that means you have all of these brilliant scientists, all of these brilliant marketers, all of these brilliant entrepreneurs who, instead of dealing with problems like malaria control or things like gender equality or things like food poverty, food insecurity, are actually diverted towards solving this issue of hair loss. So in economic terms, you could conceptualize that as opportunity cost. Think about that global economy cost to opportunity cost, sorry, of people being diverted from things like malaria, things like heart illness, things like gender equality, race equality, slavery, into things like hair loss. That's a big issue for us to grapple with. And I think fundamentally that what we're seeing here is a bit of a misalignment suddenly in this issue of value and price, right? So we're seeing this issue where the two have become disconnected. So the way that we used to assign the question of price was by having a certain intrinsic value, something that socially we had agreed to. So we had agreed that if something was valuable to society, then the market would work accordingly. So market would work in order to assign it a relative price. But that connection has been lost. It's been broken, which is why you see footballers earning £300,000 a week. You see nurses in the UK earning £30,000 a year. And I don't think anyone would argue that when you look at intrinsic value, when you look at their contribution to society, when you look at their role in alleviating the Sustainable Development Goals, that a footballer makes any kind of comparison to a nurse. And yet we have a current economic system where that doesn't hold true, right? Where if you're interested in being financially successful, well, you will chase football, you will not chase nursing, you will not chase medicine, right? The average GP, so that's a doctor in general practice in the UK, earns £70,000. But again, if you work as a hedge fund manager, well, you can earn £3 million just as your bonus every year. So there is a real issue here in terms of the way that our economic system rewards certain forms of behavior. And effectively, what I'm trying to argue is that it's not just certain forms of behavior, it's rewarding our intervention in certain problems. It's saying these problems are important. Creating entertainment from football is important. Nursing is less important. And I think, I'm sure in Indonesia, as in other parts of the world, we have seen this year how very important nurses are, how very important medics are during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've not had football, and I don't think many people have felt that that's been a real problem in our lives. Now, here's one way to think about how, in economic terms, this has now been hidden from us. So this has been hidden from you. So one of the things that's happened is the fact that something in economic terms, we would call it negative externalities, have not been priced into the market. So here's a survey. Sorry, this is research done at the University of Augsburg in Germany. So how much more expensive would meat be in Germany if environmental costs were included? Now this is in percentage terms. So if you were to look here at conventionally produced meat, if you were to look at greenhouse gases, so if this here is, this is the cost, 119% of the price would need to be added in terms of nitrogen pollution. 57% of the price would need to be added in terms of greenhouse gases. 20% would need to be added in terms of the energy which is consumed in the production of meat. And if you compare this here to organically produced meat, it's better, but it's still a lot more. So it's in total 82%. So effectively we'd say that even organically produced meat, when you add in these negative externalities, you are doubling the cost, right? In this case, for conventionally produced meat, we would have to treble the price. So there are big issues here into how things are priced. Here's an example here. Sorry, this is a really blurry image, but it's taken from a product that I saw in India, where they were replacing paper products effectively, and so what they were trying to indicate was that when one tree is cut, the cost of it is 33 lakhs. So 33 lakhs in UK money is around £30,000. So I'm guessing that's around 20,000 US dollars, 23,000 US dollars. A tree cut is 5.3 lakhs, which again is about 55,000 pounds. Land fertility drops by 64,000 pounds, so about 70,000 pounds. And of course, you lose money because trees capture carbon. So you have the loss of carbon capture as well, which they're valuing here at about 12,500, 13,000 pounds. So when you price all of these things in, you can see that there is a big issue in our markets. Firstly, they incentivize the wrong kind of problems being solved. Secondly, we are not pricing in the cost of the environment in particular. So we're not aware of the problem, basically. The problem is being hidden from us. We think, oh, well, if meat costs £2 for a chicken, for example, well, that includes the environmental cost, but it doesn't, because that chicken in real life, if you were to add in the environmental cost, would cost closer to £5.50, which is very expensive. But then you're pricing in everything else. And I would say that part of the issue is that we're failing to think about all the dimensions of a product or a service. So on this is a very basic chart, but this is generally how, when we think about different types of organizations, we have characterized them. So on one hand, we have said that organizations that create a lot of social impact potential, well, they're traditional charities, right? NGOs. You'd call them NGOs in Indonesia. In the UK, we call them charities. And they are reliant on donations. They're reliant on donations from either individual citizens, or they're reliant on donations from foundations, from government. But the idea is that they are here on the chart, right? They are very high in social impact, but they are low when it comes to profit potential. Profit potential is very low here, right? On the other hand, you have an orthodox business. And here, typically, you characterize companies like oil companies like Exxon, Shell, BP. So they are very high on profit, but they are very low on social impact. So they're completely on the other side. But what we see in the emergence of in the last 15 to 20 years is a really big growing sector of the global economy. And that is a social enterprise. In America, they're called B Corps. In the UK, they're called social enterprises, and they have an organizational form called a community interest company. And social enterprises are fascinating organizational vehicles. They're fascinating. They do fascinating work because what they do is they create profit. So they have, it's very important, as Bahalawan was saying at the beginning, that every company, every business has to create profit, has to generate income in order to be sustainable, but they do it by addressing problems that people have asked for. So they are social impact orientated, but they're also profit orientated. And what's really interesting about social enterprises is that they have grown across the world. So in India, for example, there are now 1 million social enterprises in existence in India. 1 in 3 new startups in the UK is a social enterprise. And as a percentage of GDP, the social enterprise sector is bigger in the US than Silicon Valley. So we are talking about a huge new sector of the global economy that is being absolutely transformative by saying, well, you can generate profits, but you can also solve real problems. And that's just my joke there. I'm not a Manchester United fan. I'm an Arsenal fan. So I always say they're a company that does, their organization does a lot of harm to the world, and they don't make any money either. So apologies if you happen to be a Manchester United fan, but I'm definitely not. So these are 2 ways to conceptualize the value which is created through a social enterprise. One is from John Elkington, very famous scholar of social enterprises, which says that for a social enterprise to succeed, it sits in the middle of 3 different sectors, or 3 vectors even. So it is orientated towards people, planet, and profit. So it generates what's called a triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line is it must be profitable, it must be good for people, so it must address one of these sustainable development goals, and lastly, it must be good for the planet. It must triple, that's why it's called a triple bottom line. And it's important just to realize here that to be a social enterprise, to hit a triple bottom line, is much harder than being orientated towards just one. It's much, much harder. So you've got to do a lot more because you're effectively measuring 3 forms of value. On the right, this is from the Social Enterprise Institute, and it shows that there are actually 4 forms of value here. The commercial value proposition, which a social enterprise has, but so do all businesses. So there is financial value and there is customer value. So are you generating a profit? Are you generating value for your customer? But at the same time, you have, oh, it's just disappeared. At the same time, you have impact value. So there is social value. So what impact are you having on society? And operational value. So what good are you doing through your supply chains? Are you being operationally sustainable? So this you're talking about here, you're talking about how you do things and what you do is the way that I explain it to my students. And what's happened over the last 6 years is the evolution of some new business models. So these are new innovative business models. And for those of you who like stories, there is an idea that there are 7 types of story in the world, right? And in the same way, there were maybe 4 or 5 social enterprise business models. Now there are at least 6. There are at least 6 business models, but there are more coming on stream. So the most famous one is called a WISE, which is a work integration social enterprise. And that effectively works by taking people who are excluded from the labor market. So this may be women who have been off work because of childcare. It may be disabled people. It may be people who have learning disabilities. It may be people who have had issues with drug abuse, and it's giving them a chance to re-enter the labor market. So this is probably, WISE is probably one of the most basic social enterprise models out there. And there are great examples of it, like DC Kitchen in Washington, like Jamie's Kitchen in the UK, and like Bicycle Hub in the UK as well. Then there is upcycling. So upcycling is taking a waste good Now that can be anything, and turning it into a product. So a really good example of upcycling in the UK, actually globally now, is a company called Elvis and Cress. So Elvis and Cress, I mean, the story is amazing. So one day, the founders of Elvis and Cress were walking around London, and they came across a waste heap. And what they found was meters and meters of fire hose. So these are fire hoses that are attached to fire engines, and they are made of red leather. And they were just being discarded. They were being thrown away. And what they looked at, and if you think about a fire hose is very, very long, right? We're talking about meters and meters round around a fire engine. So they did a quick search around all of the waste heaps in London, and they found that there were hundreds of meters of waste leather that were being thrown away. And what they did is they took this and they've upcycled them into bags. So you can now buy Elvis and Cress handbags, Elvis and Cress rucksacks, any kind of Elvis and Cress belts, any kind of accessory you can think of, you can buy using this waste material. Oh, my apologies. We've got the bottom of the pyramid. So these are enterprises that serve people who have been excluded from products. So these are things like solar energy, for example. This is things like mobile phones. This is things like credit that generally have been made available to many people, but not the poorest people in society. We've got the sharing economy, which I'm sure in Indonesia is growing very fast. But this is the economy where people, instead of buying objects, you share them. So sharing economy is growing around the world. We're seeing it in particular in terms of cars. So instead of buying a car, here in the UK now, you can now share a car. So you may, for example, rent a car for a year, for an hour or 2 hours. You wouldn't have to buy it. So this is really good because it's good for the environment, because it reduces car ownership. And it's also very good for people's pockets. It saves people money because it's much, if you don't need to use the car all the time, then it's much cheaper than having to buy your own. We have the cross-subsidy model and one-for-one, which are quite similar. But the one-for-one model is basically if you buy something, if you buy a pair of something or you buy an object, you donate an object. And probably the most famous example of one-for-one is a social enterprise called Tom Shoes. So Tom Shoes started in the US, has now become a global brand, and their first value proposition to customers was, if you buy a pair of Tom Shoes, we will donate a pair of Tom Shoes to a different part of the world. And they were giving them to parts of West Africa. And the cross-subsidy model is very, very similar. So effectively, what they do is they donate they offer differential pricing. So for example, rather than giving away a pair of shoes, they would simply price it lower. And there are lots of examples of cross-subsidy around the world as well. So what happens is you may well, excuse me. Thank you, excuse me. So cross subsidies where you buy, a customer, say in the developed world, will pay full price for a product or service, but someone else will pay much less depending on their ability to pay. So it's a variation on the one-for-one model. Excuse me, I think I have hay fever. But the social enterprise X factor here, the thing that all social enterprises have in common, is they create value chains from undervalued resources, right? That's their X factor. That's what all social enterprises have. So they are either taking a material which has been undervalued, like hoses, or they're taking people who have been undervalued, like people who have been long-term unemployed, because, as I said, maybe they are women who've been giving birth, maybe they are people who have been disabled, maybe they've been doing military service. So these are some of the ways in which social enterprises generate margins. Now, hopefully we've still got time for me to show you some examples from our university. So I run the Social Impact Lab at the university. So we support social entrepreneurs and social impact leaders from across the university and indeed internationally. So I'd be really keen to hear from all of you about your ideas for social impact and social enterprise, and to work closely with ITS to see how we might be able to collaborate and get you to work with some of our students. So this is the first example I want to show you. This is one of my students. His name is Andreas Ostrovsky Pereira, and he graduated in politics and international relations. So nothing to do with tech. He had no tech background at all. And he did my social enterprise module. And he then joined me on a program I run called Spark India, which takes students to India to work on organizational challenges. And we combine that with personal development workshops. And in fact, we've just finished Spark India 2021. And Andreas worked with us to develop a lamp called the Sabi lamp. So in Lake Victoria on the east coast of Africa, and it's called Lake Victoria, and it straddles 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. The main form of fishing is a sardine. They fish a certain type of sardine. But what they were doing is they were using a kerosene lamp. So kerosene has lots of problems. The first thing about kerosene is that it gives off toxic fumes. Now that was creating respiratory lung disease for the fishermen. It was also creating toxic fumes for fish, and in fact for all of the animals in Lake Victoria. And lastly, kerosene lamps were very expensive and very inefficient. So they would burn out. And the only time you can fish for these sardines called dag is at night. So they needed to be able to last for at least 3 to 4 to 5 hours. And so what Andreas and his team created was this very special lamp called the Sabi lamp. And Sabi uses solar power, so it charges in the day, and then it runs at night. It gives off between 30 to 50 lumens. It is environmentally clean, so it has no impact on the fishermen, has no impact on the fish. And in fact, it's enabling people to catch 30% more fish per night using this Sabi lamp. So this is an absolutely brilliant innovation from Andreas. And let me just see if I can get a little video. Oh, I can't get that video up, unfortunately, from Andreas, but I will show you. Oh, let me go through some of the other. Let me just see. Bahalangwan, how long do I have left?
Around 10 minutes left, or 12 minutes, 9 to 10.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to see if it's all right, if I can just see if I can share something from Andreas, and if I have some time. Actually, you know what? Okay, hopefully you can see this video.
Going through the social enterprise module and the social impact lab taught me many things. Some were practical, which I use in my startup here in Tanzania on a daily basis, especially when it comes to the theory of change, which really keeps us on mission. But the most important lessons were based on values. The Social Impact Lab really helped us focus on and explore our values as individuals and as leaders, which has helped me become the best possible social entrepreneur I can be, ultimately for the benefit of others.
So that was Andreas with his company, Saga Energy Solutions. And in fact, he spoke on our Spark India program just now, and he's truly inspirational. And I would really love for Andreas to be able to address your students, and maybe as part of a future collaboration, we can bring him to speak to ITS. This is Dimitri. So Dimitri is a brilliant entrepreneur. He was part of my Spark India program in 2019, so 2 years ago now. So Dimitri identified a problem in Southampton, and the problem that he identified was the fact that there is a big environmental cost to beer. So beer is very environmentally intensive. So it takes a lot to brew beer. It takes a lot of harvesting, there's a big water footprint, an environmental footprint and carbon footprint to beer. And so what he and his team worked on, again through the Social Impact Lab, was a new beer called Future Brew. So Future Brew, and this is their first brand, called Dodo, Sustainable Pale Ale, was a technique by which you could make beer from waste bread. So lots of bread is thrown away in the UK every year. So they came up with a way in which they could harvest this bread and they could turn it into beer. And they recently won funding from a university incubator, Dragon's Den, for £20,000 of funding to develop this beer, and it's now being rolled out in 3 cities in the UK. This is a really impressive young man, Mauro Cozzi. So Mauro was part of my social enterprise module again in 2017. He's an engineer, in fact. So he was an aeronautics engineer. He went to Silicon Valley with a startup in 2018. That startup didn't work, but he came back, and we gave him an investment of just £3,000, £4,000, and his story is incredible. So he has started an enterprise, an artificial intelligence enterprise called Emitwise. So Emitwise uses artificial intelligence to help companies track their carbon emissions and to identify where there may be leaks. So the places in their organization, especially when they are industrial, where they may be leaking carbon. So he created this company called Emitwise in 2019. We gave him £4,000 to start his enterprise. Emitwise has just closed its seed funding, its Series A round of funding, for $6.5 million. And one of their investors is Rupert Graves, who is one of the founders of Uber, who I'm sure you've heard of and which you may use. So Emitwise is an absolutely brilliant social enterprise, and I really do invite you all to look them up, see what Emitwise is doing, because it's a brilliant application of artificial intelligence to solving a real problem. And as I was saying at the beginning, you can use artificial intelligence. In fact, you can use any form of technology for any purpose, right? You can use artificial intelligence for things like for things like matching people on dating apps. You can use it in order to help customize food menus, or you can use it to solve a real problem. And for Mauro, the big opportunity here was actually what the case they made. And going back to Bahalwan's initial point, is their value proposition to businesses was, actually, if you're able to see where you're leaking carbon and where you are, you have a big environmental footprint, you can save money. Because nowadays, as I'm sure is happening in Indonesia, there are now fines for companies. So if you have high carbon emissions, the government will fine you because there is now regulation. But also, if you can identify places where you're leaking carbon, you will save money because a carbon leak costs you money. So you can see here how the application of technology, very innovative tech in form of artificial intelligence, can be truly game-changing for businesses. And that, in fact, this whole industry of carbon accounting is a huge business already around the world. So if you're interested in that, in carbon reduction and carbon emissions, please do look at Emitwise. Very happy to provide anyone with links if they would like to. And lastly, I would like to just talk about a company who I absolutely love. I'm on the board. I'm on the board of 3 of those 4 companies. But this company has a special place in my heart. The founder is a man called Kaushal Shah. So Kaushal was a student of international entrepreneurship in 2015. And his family own a paper company in India. And what Kaushal identified was that around the world, a lot of money is wasted and a lot of trees are cut down in the name of paper. So what he wanted to do was create a whole new industry of tree-free paper. And so what Envopap, which is the name of his company, does is they create paper from waste bamboo and sugarcane. And this is already being done in India. And through the process, which you can see, they then make Envopap materials. And the brilliant thing about Envopap is that all of their products are marine degradable, which means they will degrade in the sea. They are biodegradable, and they are recyclable. So there is a complete circle with Envopap. They started off making paper. They are now making paper packaging. So maybe you've seen in food that a lot of packaging in food is not recyclable. So there is a lot of plastic film, which you find when you're ripping open packaging, film packaging. And actually in the UK, you cannot recycle that film. That gets thrown into landfill, that gets burnt. And of course, there is a huge cost to that burning. And sometimes it doesn't get burnt, it just gets sent overseas. And you've seen how the UK is now exporting waste to places like places in Southeast Asia, and there are big UK dumps of waste in the Indian Ocean right now, just because the UK hasn't got a way of dealing with all of this waste. So Envopap is now part of that solution. You can see here their impact. So their paper has a 38% footprint saving compared to conventional paper. They have saved close to 1 million trees since 2015. That's incredible. And their carbon footprint saving is 28% compared, and this is this in terms of packaging. So 38% for paper, 28% for packaging. You can see, he could have applied his business acumen. He could have applied that technology just to make more paper, just to make higher quality, higher premium, higher margin paper, higher margin packaging. But he said, I remember Kaushal has so many great stories, but one of his great stories is, I think it was his 2nd year at Southampton. He walked into a supermarket, and just as he was going to the checkout, he saw line after line of plastic wrapped food. And Kaushal said, in my lifetime, I will get rid of all of this. There will be no more food made using plastic. That is his mission in life. It's absolutely crystal clear. He keeps it on a piece of paper beside his bed. So he looks at it before he goes to bed. He looks at it when he wakes up. It's a truly inspirational story of someone who just has a very singular, single-minded focus. And as a reward for that focus, Kaushal was awarded Forbes Award for 30 under 30 in Europe just 2 months ago. So everyone in university is very proud of Kaushal. We're very proud of everyone. But as I said, the main source of pride for us is that they have chosen to tackle a problem, a real problem, and they've applied themselves to that problem. They have not chosen something which can just make money. They have said it must make money, but it must be environmentally sustainable and it must be good for people. So I'm just going to end by a call, I suppose, which is for all of you to join us in shaping the world we want. This is these challenges we're talking about: the reduction of carbon emissions, replacing gases which pollute the water, making sure that all of our food is made from recyclable food as possible, so we have a circular economy in food. These are all absolutely vital and helping to make it really obvious to which organizations are polluting the most. These are 4 big environmental challenges that our students and now alumni have risen to. So I just want to ask all of you, what's your challenge? What will you rise to? You know, there are 17 sustainable development goals. Pick one, right? This is what I say to my students. Pick one of the SDGs. Think where I'm guessing a lot of you are technology graduates. Technology is going to be absolutely vital to solving these problems because they are getting bigger and they are outrunning us, right? Things like climate change, the rate at which we can innovate is struggling to catch up with the rate of climate change. So we need to start to innovate faster and bigger, and we need all of your generation to lead this movement. We need you to be leaders. We need you to be innovators. So my offer to you is I would love to humbly support you as best I can, where I can connect you with some of our network of sustainable green entrepreneurs. I would love to. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you and to share my story with you and the story of some of our alumni and my students. You will find a link here to the Social Impact Lab. You can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Please do add me on LinkedIn. You can find the Social Impact Lab on Facebook and Instagram as well. And yeah, once again, thank you so much, ITS, for the brilliant opportunity to spread this message to your students. And I really, really, truly and honestly look forward to collaborating with you in the very near future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pathik. It's very, very insightful courses we've got. And just in sum up for Dr. Pathik says that this is about the environmental issues and also being able to embrace the environmental issues and also social. That's why social enterprises scope is for triple bottom line: people, planet, and also profit. At the same time, she also mentioning the 6 business of model tomorrow's capitalism, and in extent to implementing of social enterprises. She also mentioned about the 4 social enterprises model, which been done by these students, including solar transitions, planet saving beer, and incentivizing emissions of control and green packaging. So it is just beyond my expectations. It's very, very impactful in the future sustainability of green entrepreneurships. Thank you so much. And don't go anywhere. Dr. Patipata, stay with us because we're going to have very special session for discussion. So for those who just come, just greatly welcome for any discussion in the last session. We have 30 minutes for discussion. So keep in mind and don't forget to put your questions or your thoughts into our chat box below or into the linking signed by the crew. Okay, thank you so much. And we're moving forward to the second speaker, Bu Puti. This is gonna tell about the business, design thinking tools and business growth. So before that, I will give it some preface about what is design thinking and business growth. And this is thinking has continuously involved in many organizations to this world. And this is modern thinking approach that helps in growth of your business. It is human-centered approach and creative problem solving. So we just still have association with previous topic, which is in terms of sustainable development. That's because of problem solving. Okay, in an organization, design thinking always puts customer in the highest priority. It's play a vital role in producing satisfactory results and put the business ahead at the competition. An innovative approach to organize your work leads to the astonishing result. Without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Puti. Hello, Bu Puti. Can you hear my sound clearly? Okay.
Hello, you can hear my voice?
Sure, yeah, got it. You have 40 minutes for presenting your ideas, and without further ado, time's yours, Bu Puti.
Okay, thank you. I will start screen sharing. Okay, is my screen already can be viewed by you?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. All right, good day, everyone. My name is Puti Sinansari, when you can call me Puti. I would like now to share about design thinking and business process. So how many of you know about design thinking, or even is this your first time hearing about design thinking? Well, in Indonesia, design thinking is already introduced in 2015 according to this newsletter in Koran Jakarta, which said that design thinking sets the mindset for innovation, which means that this method is really helpful and predict in the future on 2015 to help people to innovate things, products, service, or system to help the consumer and fulfill their needs. And as you can see, for the last 10 years, there are so many high technology company that is growing so fast. As you can say there is a Tesla, Google, Amazon, or any other tech company that is very fast growing their innovation that we cannot even think about it in the last 10 years before. And not only in the world, but also in Indonesia, you know that Gojek is one of the growing tech company in Indonesia, and they are also applied the design thinking to develop their product first, and then until now they become a super app that provide service for their consumers, from transportation, logistic, and even the money, financial technology. So here I have a 3 minutes video which will tell you at glance about how is design thinking can be applied in our daily life.
When I first moved to Cambodia, I lived in a rural village, and it took a little bit of time before people got used to this sort of foreigner wandering around. Initially, I was here to search for a remedy to a problem: anemia, caused by a lack of iron in the blood. It causes dizziness and weakness. It breeds complacency and lethargy. Kids can't concentrate in school. It also causes premature births and problems during pregnancy for women. Nearly 2 out of 3 children are anemic. But this piece of metal has the power to stop it all. My challenge was to find a way to supplement the typical Cambodian diet of fish and rice. I knew that iron pills and other iron treatments weren't really affordable by many people in the villages. In my search, I found that cooking in a cast iron pot can release iron into the food, and that iron is then absorbed in the diet. But I realized that most Cambodian women use aluminum pots because they're cheaper and lighter. And then I got to thinking, what if I could get them to put this chunk of iron in their pot? It would be a simple, cheap, and accessible treatment that even the remote villagers could use. But my simple solution had one big problem. I found that the women were hesitant to add this sort of ugly piece of iron into their pots. I found that the iron blocks came in very useful, but just not in the pots. And so I realized I had to dig a little bit deeper. I searched for everything. I looked at sayings and beliefs. I looked at rituals, anything that would give me a better understanding of Cambodian culture. And then I landed this, a symbol of good luck. I think I was a little bit shocked when I found out how positive the findings were. In the test areas, anemia has pretty much disappeared altogether, which is absolutely astounding. It was far exceeded what we had expected. We're hoping that this little fish holds the key to treating anemia across the region and beyond. It's definitely one lucky fish.
Yeah, as you can see from the video, that there is a village that is lack of the iron for the children, and then the people, the researcher there, make with a design thinking method by know about the customer wants, the customer needs, the customer behavior, to make a tool that is they need what they need, not only what they need, but also what they want and fit with their behavior. So what is design thinking actually? Let me tell you a story about the Henry Ford. He said that if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. It is because your customer or the user only know at that time that faster horses makes their transportation process goes faster, because they don't think any new tools that makes them can transport from one point to another. They just know about horse as a tool for transportation. So design thinking not only just asking but about what the consumer or the user wants, but also we need, as a designer, we need to describe what they want. Design product is not that easy to just ask, but can translate the description of the user want. Because usually the user can describe what they want, but they don't know how to get there. They just know that they want a faster things to move from one point to another, but they don't know if there is another options beside horse that can take them to do a faster transportation. In a linear or conventional company, we always start with what we have when developing a product and then rely on great marketing to make a consumer want. For example, in Google Plus, if you know, sometimes ago, years ago, Google wants also to make a social media compared to Facebook, because they think that who doesn't have a Google account at that time until now. So it means if they have a Google account, means they don't have to make another account to use the social media Google Plus. But the market say different. Months after the Google Plus launch, it is failed. It become failure to this company, and the user just doesn't want to use it because they choose Facebook more because they can do more in Facebook, such as uploading video, image, or updating their status, and the user interface is more attractive than the Google Plus. So in design thinking, we don't start from what we have, but we start from what the user wants or what the user needs. What makes design thinking different? Design thinking make a great focus on these three things. The first one about the feasibility of technology. As long as there is a technology to make it, it doesn't have to be a sophisticated technology, but it can be made. So design thinking solution can be done. Second one is economically viable with business. If you make a great innovation, but your user cannot afford it, even it can solve your user problem, then you don't have to worry to make a mass production of that innovation tools, because it will not be bought by the user because they cannot afford it. They just simply cannot afford it. Too expensive for them. And the last thing, but this is the most important thing, is the desirable of the stakeholders or human. If your user wants it, sometimes they can ignore the viability and feasibility. They just want to use your innovation tools, but also they do have a limitation with sources, with money. So if your product have these three things, it means that this is your focus, how to make a product with a design thinking process or method. And design thinking always use the iterative process for creative problem solving by understanding mindset of the user and the unmet needs of your stakeholders. So it will make a win-win solution between your users. Another thing that makes the design thinking different is because it can reframe the problems. When we face the problem in the real world, sometimes we can be very overwhelmed. And then this design thinking will guide you to see the problem for the 36 degree with another different point of view. So when you see with different point of view, it means that you can connect the dots of the insights that you get from these different points of view. After you get to know the insight and synthesize it, you will ask to make it as an action, because this is how you can test whether your solution is the answer or not. If not, just back to the first step. That's why this design thinking method, doing the iterative checking to make sure you make improvement every time you check your user again and again. Because it has many point of view, it may produce the diverse solution with generate many potential what if correct answer. And then because you will ask to do some action to make your solution getting better and better, you will get a fast failure, but also in every failure, there is a learning curve to make your product successful. So from what I explained before, you will think that, well, design thinking is very messy. Yes, at the first time you face your problem, at the first time you jump into the real problem in the real world, you will face a lot of problems in there. The step is understanding and defining the problem is important. To know which problem is the first priority of your design thinking method. We cannot solve all of the problems, but by solving one or two problems, it will lead to another solution to another problems. By the time you do iteration, making your prototype and taking lots of feedback and doing the revision, your path is getting clear and bright because you know your customer or your user well, and you will feel confident because you can develop your tools or products better and meet the user wants. And then the last thing is finalize your prototype. There are many steps if you search on the Google about how to do a design thinking. But as I can say that there are three things that you have to remember. First one is understanding, because design thinking in design thinking, user is your key of your method, means that you have to understand your user. You have to know your user well by empathizing with their problem and define the problem. So many problems you have, and then define it into specific problems. After that, you will explore. By explore, meaning that you do the ideation to make a solution and then making a prototype as the answer and the action point with your solution. After that, you will do an implementation to your user by doing user testing. In this step, usually you have to go backwards to even going to the first step, which is empathize, to know more what is wrong with your prototype, or what is wrong, what can you improve to make your user can do your prototype. And after with enough research and enough iteration, you can launch your product, service, or system. But this process will be looping again to the first step, because your user is a human, and human is a growing thing. In one time they want this, and perhaps in the next 10 years, on the next 5 years, they want another things. So let's see the step one by one. As you can see here, the first step is about empathize. I will tell about Gojek. As many of you know, this is a super app from Indonesia. So when the first Gojek app launch, they just know that their user need to move from one point to another, because Jakarta has many traffic jam, and it is very bad traffic jam. If you want to take a taxi, it is very expensive, and it is also, you will stuck in the traffic jam. So at the first time they launched their app, they focus on go right, or transport their user from point A to point B. But after they launch their product, they listen their user, that their user wants more than just transportation. They develop another features like Go Food to send and to deliver your food, not only deliver, but also buy your food first and then deliver to your house. Go Send by delivering your package. Go Shop by help you to shop in one of the supermarket, and etc. until now they become a super app. It is because they listen their user need, because Gojek walk in the user's shoes. They observe their behavior. Well, in Indonesia, many people just don't want to get out of the house just to buy food. One, because traffic jam. Two is because if someone can buy it for me, why not? Their emotion, their frustration about traffic jam, their struggle. So this will make Gojek as one of the super app. And then after that, they make a divine as a second step. So as you can see, I already write about the big problems that Gojek find in the first day of their launch. First one is the user is hard to move from point A to point B directly. Sometimes they have to change the transportation. Even the public transportation is not as good as now in Jakarta. And consumer like it when someone can buy or do something to them with a cheaper price. And then traffic jam in big city in Indonesia is very frustrating. So knowing these three big problems and connecting the dots between the insight of their user, and then Gojek launched their product and growing until now. They focus on one big problem. It's about the user cannot move or hardly can move from one point to another point. And then they explore with how might we feature, and then not Gojek is not always winning with their feature. For example, in this pandemic, after this pandemic, they have to close with Go Beauty, or when you call someone just to do your hair and do your makeup in your home, they have to close their Go Massage. Is one call for a massage. Is very popular in Indonesia. And then that will make them defining the big problem of their users' need. After you define the problem in your business, it's about how to create the idea by generating ideas. This can be simple because everyone can have many ideas, and ideas never can be wrong. It is simple, but sometimes you can be overwhelmed with your ideas because there are so many ideas that you have. So the tip is simple. You have to throw any idea that you have, and then you can prioritize and cluster it from the most relevant and into making some combination concept that can resonate with our users. So that's how the ideation can work. Also, the ideation, you can use this value proposition framework to know what is your value proposition in the blue box and your customer profile and in the red box. You can write your gain, your pain, what about your product, and then mapping also your customer, their gains, their pains, and their customer jobs to make your ideation process will be easier so that you can develop new idea, and then it can be pivoting your business or even shifting your business. After you develop the ideation, and then after that, the next step is by making a prototype. This is a quick, cheap, and simple way to validate your solution from the ideation and explain your idea and test it to your user. This is how you can explore how might your idea, your solution can solve your user needs or user wants. A prototype is designed to improve and doing the iteration. So you don't have to worry that you will need to redo your prototype after doing a user testing. I will tell you a short video about prototype, just perhaps a half minutes.
Task 1. Create a new folder called School.
Create a new folders. I think that's it. Okay. Like school. And then next.
So as you can see in the video, prototype is doesn't have to make it as sophisticated as you want, but the focus is how you make your user can experience your solution. So after you make a prototype, you will see there is a user testing phase. And the focus of user testing is with better understanding how this design is the solution, is the answer with a quick and cheap time. And this user testing will make you as designer understand the user motivation, emotion, the pain, desire, their behavior correctly with your solution. And with this user testing, we are trying to solve and gain the feedback to make this opportunity. This is one of my students do in user testing. They make an app because there is a problem in their home. The English course, since pandemic, the English course doesn't have many students, while there is there are many students from around Indonesia come to learn, and then they try to make an app to make it easier for new students to learn more about English in that course, in the English course. And then they do user testing by doing with Zoom, with the user will ask to use their prototype about app with English course application. So the concern about design thinking is sometimes people think that this is very expensive. Well, I can say that this is a great investment. Perhaps it is expensive at the first time because you have to give a lot of resource and a lot of effort to do an observation, ideation, and those steps, but it promised with high return on investment. Yes, it will take a long time, but this means that you're saving time in the long run. We want to do business in the long run, right? So with design thinking method, you will save your time in the long run. At the first and the 1 or 2 or 3 years, it means that it feels like your time will take too long to produce or research this new product, system, or services, but it will save your time in the long run. Some people also say that it cannot give the customer wants precisely, because in design thinking, we want to make a win-win solution. Your user is the key of this method, but also there are many stakeholders that needs to be paid attention for. That's why in design thinking, you make a win-win solution to make sure that every stakeholder can take benefits about it. And some companies said they already know their customer well, but you will have to remember that your customer is growing. Their customer perhaps needs another wants, another needs. That's why with design thinking, you will know better about your customer because you do the empathize, you walk on their shoes. That's why you can define your user needs with empathy phase. This design thinking has too much iteration, not focus. Yes, because problem is complex and the complexity is not linear, and human is also a complex. So this design thinking method will focus on impact in the long run so that everyone, the stakeholders of your problems, will get the benefit, will get the great impact with this design thinking method. So what is the effect of this design thinking for business growth? In conclusion, this design thinking, first, they can grow your customer engagement because you will learn more about your user. You will know with empathize to your user about their emotion, their behavior, their pain, their gains. And then it makes your company and your user or your customer make a great engagement. And then this design thinking will lead you to pivoting your business into a better thing because you know your user needs. That's why you can do another pivoting business or even shifting your business. And then because you know your your user, you can sharpen your brand positioning. Your user can remember your brands because they think or they thought you know your brand knows them better. Your brand knows them well. And it will make your brand value can be better than before. And for the development process, the system, the product, or the service development process, it can be explored greatly with this design thinking. So let's talk more if you have any idea about how to make this design thinking, especially in a social issue, because from the first speaker said that social issue is very important right now, and many social issues can be done with design thinking method. I think that's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Bahalwan. I will give it to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bu Puti. It's very insightful either for your presentation is just beyond my expectations. I'll talk about how you deliver specifically for the design thinking tools for innovating or leveraging the ideas. Because I agree with you that as everything should be human-centerized, which is focusing on the problem, as previously mentioned by Dr. Dr. Pathak, that we have to focusing on or addressing the problem, this problem associated with the needs. Then how the design thinking process is trying to cope with any special approach, which is you just mentioning that there's many type of design thinking approach, but for specifically the one thing is important is they focusing on what the customers wants or what the targets want by using empathize at the very beginning, so they really understand what their root causes. And then you just mentioning that for future impact, that design thinking always be perfectly matched with the future's demand of the customer wants or customer, or specifically in the business case, which is the market. I think that's all for Ms. Puti. Thank you so much. And now we're moving forward for the last sessions. We greatly welcome for any discussions, feedbacks, or specifically for questions, because we still invite again Dr. Pathak and also Dr. Ms. Puti for the discussion. We have 30 minutes for answering portion, and don't hesitate to give any ideas. Okay, now shall we start with the first session? We have about I open two questions for now, so feel free to ask anything regarding the topic for today's. Just raise your hand, or if you're shy, I think most of you feeling so, you just typing into our Zoom chat. So feel free. Anyone? Okay. I just got from the guest lecture series questions responses. Questions coming from Ayah Hamdi Abdel, okay, coming from Cairo University of Egypt. The questions, I think, is for Dr. Pathak. Yeah. I want to know about the achievement made by Indonesia in a various field in the context of sustainable development. Can you just give me references or website that I can take a look? Or maybe you have any ideas, or you have any previous research or make it objects of Indonesia in the context of sustainable development. Okay, Dr. Pathik, to you about the responding the first questions.
Thank you so much for the question. I mean, I think Indonesia has made so many achievements in terms of these sustainable development goals, but I think, you know, my expertise is in social entrepreneurship and social innovation. And there are lots of Indonesian social enterprises and social innovations. The best place I would suggest for you to find them, because I have to admit, this isn't my area of expertise. Indonesia is a new area for me, so one that I really want to learn about, but one which actually at the moment I don't have a great deal of knowledge about. But if you were to look, for example, at the Acumen Fund, so the Acumen Fund is a social investment company, global social investment organization. They make investments all around the world, and I do know that Indonesia is a place where they have made investments. So I would recommend you go to the Acumen Fund and see what they're doing there. If you also want to go to the United Nations Development Program website, they have case studies from around the world, so you'll also see what's happening in Indonesia too.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Patipata. Just mentioning about these Indonesia's already growing up into this sustainable development has been growing, especially for Indonesia's developing countries. So she's looking forward to the collaboration with others, partnership, or many stakeholders that need to be hand in hand together with industry, with the university as educational institutions, government hand to hand, to focusing on the sustainable development. And while we're waiting for the other questions, I would like to giving some questions for Bu Puti and also Dr. Patipata. You just mentioning Dr. Patipata mentioning about the green entrepreneurships, how the triple bottom line become fundamental issues for implementing the social enterprises, coping with the orthodox business with also traditional charity. So, and Bhuputi just mentioning just a little bit different from another perspective, which is using talking about the tools, which is specifically for sustainable development. So, what would you give it your ideas regarding the tools that you need? That we need for using social issues by using sustainable developments, by using designing tools?
I think yes. So I mean, Miss Puti's presentation was fantastic and exactly a really good accompaniment to what I was saying, because design thinking has become very, very important in social in the world of sustainable development. There was a really great story actually around design thinking, and in fact the lack of it. So this was an example about 10-15 years ago. I'm sure you've all heard of Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. So they launched a $1 million toilet competition for India. So this was an innovation to create a toilet that would help to address the fact that in India there aren't enough public toilets, and the requirement was that the technology that they used had to be waterless, so they couldn't use water because there was a real problem with water scarcity in India, as in many parts of the world. And so they had they had hundreds of different entries. And the best one was indeed a waterless toilet. But what they didn't realize, so the Gates Foundation funded this. They gave the award to a winner. They won £1 million to then implement that design of the toilet in India. Now, it didn't work. No one used it because if they had thought about design thinking, they would have realized that you have to have the user involved in that process, in the innovation process from the very beginning, right? You have to have co-design. You have to understand it from the user perspective or the customer's perspective. And in India, as in other parts of the world, water, it's a very important part of the cleaning process. So in India, if you're not using water when you're cleaning yourself, you're not clean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cultural thing. And so they went through this entire process, a year of the competition. They wasted, I mean, they gave $1 million to the person who made it. They spent another $1 million on administrating the whole competition. They did all these, they then went to implement it and it didn't work. So I think design thinking is so important that we and this is the real problem, I think, when we come from a technology background, and very important for all of your students, is technology is not the only solution. You cannot use tech without having users involved in the process, because there will be cultural issues, there will be social issues, which you have to factor in if you're going to be successful.
Okay, so just emphasizing what the design thinking tools point, that user-oriented. So basically, again, we have to know the customer very specifically, because of we have to know the culture itself, because that might be, it's not big deal for others country. For example, in the northern hemisphere of Earth, the water is not going to be big deal, because in the tropical countries, or specifically for Indonesia and India, have similarity in the sources, living sources coming from the water. So it's going to be a big deal for us. And I would like to invite Puti, for example. We've been talking and we've been working so many times, Puti, in courses and also in projects. So how would you say about the facts, how design thinking tools for specifically for leveraging the social issues?
Yeah, well, right now we are doing a lot of trying to solve the social issues, and then one of the tools that you can do is with design thinking, because you don't need sophisticated tools to help you to do research with design thinking, but you just need to go down or going all out to your user. I mean, it can be as doing like you will stay with your user for like a month, a week, or even 3 months, just to learn about their behavior, their pain, their emotion. Because now, because we focus on social issues, and if you just solve the social issues by doing from the software, or just making a paragraph about what your idea, well, perhaps it cannot be successful, because you in design thinking, the key is the user. So you have to learn more about user. You have to really know well about your user in order to make a social solution with this design thinking method.
Okay. Wow. Boboti just mentioning about because of social issues, social is always be associated with the habits. It cannot be done, cannot be solved in every certain period. So that's why it doesn't necessary for going through just certain time, but needs more extend time. I mean, for more than three months, it's gonna be looping over and over, because the problem not always be end. So this kind of endless looping, always be continuously improved by using design thinking. So wow, it's gonna be still have associated with the behavioral fancy with the first topic and the second topic for the sustainable development goals. Okay, so up to this stage, any question from the students? You may freely raise your hand into Zoom or Zoom chat, because I see from the response just one questions, and otherwise I will make a summation for today's meetings? Anyone? Okay.
Pak Bahalwan, can I ask?
Sure. Okay. Pak Irfan.
Yeah. Thank you for the nice talk. Very interesting subject. So my question is about this design thinking. What are the incentives for the manufacturer of products
Okay.
to include this environmental consciousness into them? Because you mentioned in the slide of Professor Pathik that there is a hidden cost behind this the cow thing, and but in reality, especially in developing countries like Indonesia, for example, there doesn't seem to be any direct incentive for companies or manufacturers to design products that are environmentally friendly or actually costing less in the total calculations, if you may. Yeah, what are your comments on that? Thank you.
What's the incentive for the perspective of manufacturing?
Yeah, to include to include design decisions that is more sustainable, more environmentally friendly, like that. It may involve some more cost.
Okay.
That's not my thinking. Yeah.
What's okay, Dr. Pathik, time is yours. Or what's your thoughts about this perspective?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. That's a really good question. I think the answer is twofold. So when we look at, for example, if we were to look at something like Emitwise, which looks particular emissions control, then one of the big issues that they are, one of the things, the macro environment in their favor is the governments around the world are now starting to regulate. So if you as a manufacturer are causing or creating a lot of carbon emissions, then you're going to pay a fine. So if the manufacturing process which you use is not clean, if it uses a lot of carbon, then you're going to get a fine from your government. So regulation by government is one way in which I think there is an incentive, because obviously that hits your bottom line. The second, and that applies if you're a B2B, business to business, or business to customer. But if you're specifically business to customer, and you're right that in the developing world, this isn't caught up with part of the developed world as much, but it's definitely a trend. In India and Pakistan, we're seeing this quite a bit. There is a real growing awareness of people who know that where food comes from and the cost of it. People are becoming really aware of that, and whether that's because of the hidden cost, or whether actually we're starting to understand that any food, in particular, I'm thinking about food, but even clothing, we know if it's been made unethically, if there is environmental cost, and if there is another product which is similar, which has a similar price point, and even if I think if there's a 10% or 5% margin difference in the price, customers are now driving those changes. So they're saying, they're voting with their feet, and they're saying, I don't want to drink beer which has a high water footprint. I want to buy beer which is environmentally sustainable. And you're right, and though I think you're absolutely right that in Indonesia that trend has yet to catch up. It will catch up. So it's a trend. It's a global trend, and Indonesia is now potentially where India was 2 years ago, where the UK was 5 years ago, where Denmark was 7 years ago. And so you can either, as an investor or as a manufacturer, say, I'm going to wait until there's regulation, or you can say, I'm going to act now when the regulation isn't there, and I'm going to invest in the infrastructure to manufacture clean, because it's going to happen regardless. It's just a timescale, isn't it? I think every country in the world is understanding that we're in a climate crisis. We have to act very, very soon. So if you're in business, you've got these two pressures: regulation and your customers. One of the two pressures is going to hit you very, very soon. So you've just got to make a choice of, are you going to be proactive or are you going to be reactive?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pati, for the answering. And Thank you so much for Dr. Irfan giving some perspective how the manufacturing will giving what I got if I were a producer, if I were the manufacturer, because it's gonna be long term period because of carbon emission. If we're talking about carbon emission, it's gonna be talking about the carbon footprints. How would you cost? Because everything you produce will give impact to the environmental. So that's why environmental cost allocations needs to be addressed into your, for example, pricing. And that the so Dr. Pathik also mentioning that is going to be important for the society, especially for extending the sustainability. Okay, thank you so
Can
much.
I add a bit?
Sure, Doctor.
With the design thinking point of view about green manufacturing, yes, I think Indonesia, it's not a trend right now, even now. But sometimes when I do my observation about the manufacturing industry in Indonesia, because they tend to focus on this technology, the sophisticated technology, how to make manufacture with an efficient technology. And the user perspective is not become a main focus in here. Perhaps we just don't know what is the main trigger to make the consumer in Indonesia about the manufacturing industry is realize or know or want to join in this green manufacturing. Because once we know their sweet spot about why they want to do, why they want to support this green manufacturing, I think it will make a great impact to the manufacturing industry. And if there is no regulation about it, with the user pressure, I mean, if they already know about the importance of green manufacturing, I think it will be support to the government to make that regulation as soon as possible, because the user or the customer wants it.
Yeah. So there's, thank you. I agree with you, but we are still lacking of the expertise. But I believe that Indonesia is going to in that direction, trying to make focusing on the environmental issues, specifically for the industry. Okay. All right. 5:15. We almost reach out for the final conclusion. Is there any additional question from others participants? If not, I will give it to I will close for the moderation up to this stage. Thank you so much for explain very wonderful and insightful presentation and also ideas, Dr. Pathik from University of Southampton, United Kingdom, and also Bu Puti Sinansari from Management Business Department, Indonesia, Surabaya. And then for all the participants for giving attention to us. Thank you so much, and I will give it back to the Master of Ceremony, Mbak Denti. Okay, Zaria.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Pathak and Dr. Puti Sinansari for the excellent lecture today. And thank you as well to Dr. Bahalwan Apriansyah for moderating this insightful session. And please give applause to our speaker and moderator by using the Zoom reaction feature. And furthermore, we would like to present a certificate awarding to our speaker and also our moderator today. So this is the certificate presented for Dr. Pathak as the speaker for today's guest lecture. Next is the certificate presented for Dr. Puti Sinansari as the speaker for today's guest lecture. And then last but not least, we have the certificate presented for Dr. Bahalwan Apriansyah.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
As the moderator for today's event. Once again, thank you very much to Dr. Pathik and Dr. Puti Sinansari for the very informative lectures. And thank you as well to Dr. Bahalwan Apriansyah for moderating today's guest lecture series. And we would like to apologize that the certificates have not been signed by our rector due to the lockdown. And kindly wait for the signed certificates both in soft file and hard copy, which will soon be updated by the committee. And okay, before we end our session today, we invite you all participants, as well as the honorable speaker and moderator, to take a group photo. To all participants, please open your camera and give your biggest smile. Okay, maybe we will wait for a minute for the other participant to turn on their camera. Okay. Okay, as we have around 5 slides, please keep your smile until we finish the photo session. And right, I will count from first slide. 1, 2, 3. And then for the second slide, 1, 2, 3. And then for the third slide, 1, 2, 3. For the fourth slide, 1, 2, 3. And the for last slide, 1, 2, 3. Okay, great, thank you. And now we finished the group photo. Then for the participants, please fill the feedback form through the link bit.ly/feedbackgls that you can also see on the Zoom chat room. And the deadline for filling the feedback form is 1 hour after we finish this session. And we want to remind you that the participants who will get the stamp is the participants who come on time, join this event until the end, and also fill the feedback form. And before we close the event, we would like to remind all of you that we will have another GLS on SDGs tomorrow with 2 streams. In stream 1, the topic discussed is the retrofitted machine with IR 4.0 for Sustainable Development Project. And in the stream 2, the topic discussed are prospecting from waste to wealth through innovation and sustainable industrial development in the 4th industrial revolution. And so make sure you don't miss another insightful guest lecture tomorrow, as well as our many other programs. And finally, we have reached the end of today's guest lecture series, and we sincerely apologize for any mistakes we may have made in the presenting as Master Ceremony and Committee. I, Denti, as MC, bids farewell. Good afternoon, and we will see you again on another GLS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patipata and Ibu Puti and Pak Bahalwan for this moderator, and also Pak Irfansa. I'm as the committee today. I would like to end the session and see you tomorrow for the last session. Yeah, because tomorrow we will have the last session. Okay, I hope that you're having a great day and stay healthy. Okay, let me end the session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi